Hello everyone, I'm Brian Alexander with Safety First, and welcome to the Mechanics Lab. Today we are going to learn how to operate the surface planer so that you can smooth the surface of rough cut lumber or reduce the thickness of lumber to suit your needs of your project. Let's start out by learning the parts of the planer. It is important to understand that your planer may look different with its controls in a different location, just like a Dodge or a Ford vehicle, but the planer will essentially operate the same no matter the brand. So first of all, let's take a look at the on-off switches that can be found on this particular model on the left-hand side. The green switch for go and the red switch can be depressed for stop. This particular switch will hold itself in until you twist it in a clockwise motion and it comes back out, and it is ready to go again. Just to the right of the in-feed table bed, you will find a depth of cut scale. On that depth of cut scale, it will allow you to know exactly the thickness of the board you are planing at that given moment. On the right-hand side also, you will find an elevating hand wheel. And with this hand wheel, one full turn, clockwise or counterclockwise, will allow an adjustment of 1/16 of an inch. To achieve 1/32 of an inch, you would simply just turn it 1/2 turn, counter or clockwise. On the right-hand side of the table is the bed roller adjustment. We will adjust this to a high clearance for rough cut lumber and a low clearance for smooth lumber. These bed rollers are located in the table of the planer and spin freely. Located on the left-hand side of the machine, you will find the variable rate speed control. This is measured in feet per minute and may be labeled as FPM. The faster we run a board through the planer, the rougher the finish. Or we can achieve a smoother finish by running the board at a slower feet per minute. Let's open the lid of the planer after disconnecting the power supply to the planer. Now some planers will have a plug that you can simply unplug, but the majority of planers are hardwired so that you can turn off at a breaker in the breaker panel. And ours is hardwired, so I will have to go to the breaker panel. So just as soon as I go to the breaker panel, we'll come back and look inside. Okay, now that I have gone over and disconnected the power at the breaker panel, I will simply take the bolt out. Once you loosen it, it comes out fairly easy. All right, let's take a look inside. So this particular model has anti-kickback. And so these anti-kickback teeth would simply grab hold of the board to prevent it from being able to kick back out as a safety precaution. The next thing that you will see is this machine has an in-feed roller, and that in-feed roller helps to grip the board and forces the board into the cutter head. This particular machine would have a straight cutter head set of knives. On newer models, you would tend to find the helical type cutter head, and they greatly reduce the noise produced by the planer. Past the cutter head, you would then find the outfeed roller. This grips just like the infeed roller, but helps to pull the board through the cutter head and out the rear of the machine. Let's talk about personal protective equipment for the planer. Anytime you're in the mechanics laboratory, you need to have industrial quality pair of safety glasses. This can be identified by the Z87.1 or Z87 Plus logo stamped on the side of the glasses. You should also have hearing protection, particularly when you're going to be using the planer for extended periods of time. This can be either earbuds, or you can use a pair of earmuffs. It's really your own personal preference. We also need to make sure that you're wearing the appropriate clothing for the mechanics laboratory. Do not wear anything that is loose, baggy, or neckties, jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, or watches. If you're wearing long sleeves, you will need to roll up your sleeves above your elbows, just as I have. Make sure that you never wear gloves while operating the planer, because gloves can be caught by a board, pulled into the planer, or even caught by the in-feed roller. Also remember that if you have long hair, you will need to have it restrained in a ponytail, braid, or bun. Always make sure to start with a clean work area by removing any wood chips, sawdust, or grease. Sawdust can cause you to lose your footing and slip. Inspect the machine to make sure that you've made all the adjustments to the machine and that all tools have been returned to their proper place. While using the planer or any other machine in the mechanics laboratory, make sure to give your work your undivided attention. Refrain from having conversations with anyone until you're finished using the machine. Also, make sure not to talk to others that are operating equipment. Horseplay while using a machine can be very dangerous and cause serious injuries. It is never a good idea to mix machinery with drugs and/or alcohol. But we often forget the over-the-counter and prescription medications have side effects also. As a rule, follow the guidelines on the label when they say not to operate machinery while taking medication. Before we can plane a board, we need to inspect the stock to make sure that there aren't any screws, nails, or staples in the board. It only takes one pass with a nail to damage the knives on the planer. If the knives are damaged, you will not get a smooth cut. You also need to ensure that there aren't any loose knots in the board. When a loose knot hits the cutter head, it can cause it to throw it out and maybe hit you or someone else. Boards that have splits or cracks on the edges should not be planed as it can get caught in the table. Boards that are painted, that are steel green, can dull or gum the knives and should not be run through the surface planer. Let's talk about the size requirements for our stock. Never plane a board that is shorter than 12 inches in length. The board needs to be longer than the distance between the in-feed and out-feed rollers, plus 2 inches. You also need to make sure that the board is thicker than 1/4 of an inch. You can plane different size stock up to the width of the planer bed. Your hands should never come closer than 6 inches of the planer opening. As a good rule of thumb, your hands should never pass the front edge of the table. You may have to make adjustments to the table and the bed rollers during the process of planing stock. These adjustments can be made with the planer turned off or with the machine running, as long as there's not a board being planed. The variable speed control should only be adjusted with the machine running. If you need to make repairs or service adjustments, you need to always disconnect the power supply. The planer does require maintenance to keep the knives sharp. Dull knives can be very dangerous as they can cause kickbacks. Be sure that you ask someone who is trained to sharpen the knives. Okay, now never stand or allow someone to stand directly behind the planer or even look down into the planer while a board is being planed, because a kickback could occur and cause serious injury or even death. A planer knife is not designed to cut the end grain of lumber. You can only feed a board into the planer with the grain. Only one board can be fed safely into the planer at a time, as it could overload the machine and cause a kickback. Always remember to use the best machine for the job with the machine's intended use, and follow all of these guidelines for proper use. And if any doubt, stop and ask your instructor for help.
Hello everyone, I am Jonathan Grimes of Safety First, and today I'm going to teach you how to use the surface planer. First, before you even approach the planer, make sure that your dust collection system is turned on, if your shop is equipped with one. When we first get to the machine, the first thing that we'll adjust is the bed rollers. Since today we'll be planing a piece of rough cut lumber, we'll set them to a maximum clearance. For the initial setup of the planer, measure your stock in at least 3 spots. This is the depth of cut that you'll set the depth of cut scale to. This will ensure that you only remove a small portion on the first pass to level the board. So let me go ahead and set the table to that thickness of 1 1/4 inches. We will adjust the variable speed control in just a minute when we turn the machine on. Remember, the machine has to be turned on to adjust the variable speed. We're going to set it to the maximum feet per minute since this is the first pass of rough cut lumber, and we're going to make multiple passes to get it down to our desired thickness. As we get ready to feed the lumber into the planer, remember, you will stand to the left of this machine where the on-off switch is, in case you need to turn the machine off during the planing process. Your hands should always be on the edges of the board, feeding it into the table. Never allow your hands to be on the back of the board, as a kickback could break your fingers if the board shoots out of the planer. We will either use a support stand or an off bear to catch the lumber as it comes out of the planer. Their job is only to support and move with the stock. They should never pull on the material. Now, let's go ahead and run this board for the first time. As you can see, my helper passed the board around the side of the planer instead of passing over the top, as that can be dangerous. Also, notice that the first pass just leveled the board and started to smooth it. It'll take multiple passes to smooth the entire thickness of the board. So let's go ahead and make our adjustments and run it for the second time. We will need to repeat this process until we reach the thickness required for the job. Make sure to flip the board over to smooth both sides, as the planer only removes material from the top. As we smooth both sides of the board, we'll adjust the bed rollers to a minimum clearance. We'll also adjust the variable speed to the slowest feet per minute for the last pass of each side. If you need to leave your work area while operating the planer, make sure to turn the planer off and wait for all moving parts to stop before leaving. When finished with your work, clean the work area for the next person to utilize the space. Thank you for watching our video. And remember, safety first. If in doubt on how to operate the planer, stop and ask your instructor.